Joining us now, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, author of the upcoming new book, which we urge you to buy again because we know surely you have already bought it, The Russia Hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton and frame Donald Trump. How are you?
I'm well. Buy 2 of them. Buy 5 of them.
Now, see, this is what is meant by greed and fear. I'm afraid that Greg is going to get even greedier and up the number here. Good to have you here.
Good to be here, Luke.
Let's start with the SCOTUS ruling, finding in favor of the baker.
Yes.
And against people telling him what he cannot do in his religion, which is what effectively it amounts to.
Yeah, this was the inevitable collusion.
Boy, here we go. If somebody finally found collusion.
Let's call it collision between religious rights and gay and lesbian rights. And the court really dodged it. They ruled narrowly and said he didn't get a fair hearing before the Civil Rights Commission. But there's another case that's coming up in a couple of days, and I think SCOTUS will take it. And this would allow them to rule more directly on the issue.
This is the thing that I love about your racket. Excuse me, legal profession.
It's a racket.
I mean, narrow, broad interpretations. Here's the deal. If you walked into a baker and he said he did not like Republicans or conservatives and therefore wasn't going to bake you a cake or whatever, deny you any service, that's his right or her right, whomever. I mean, I don't think I would object to that. You know, I mean, you've got a marketplace. Why would I expect to have it my way rather than, it's their joint, their business, whether they're offering a product or a service?
Well, the law has been evolving on this subject for the last 50, 60 years.
Love the way the law evolves.
Oh, it does. It's an elastic, expanding constitution, and it gets interpreted and reinterpreted. And now the latest interpretation is that, tolerance is a two-way street. It's not just we have to be tolerant to gay and lesbian people. We have to be tolerant of people who have firmly held religious beliefs as well.
Of any group, any protected group, as far as I can see. I mean, the law doesn't tell me that I can go out, and just say I want this, or this, come hell or high water, right?
What's interesting is that this particular baker was selling his goods to everybody, regardless of their preference. And so the court, interestingly, one of the justices said, well, that's irrelevant that he did. No, it's incredibly relevant that he was selling everything. He just would not make one particular custom cake for this couple because he felt it was against his religious beliefs. And the court, I think, rightly...
Wait a minute. I need to understand this because I saw that. I read it too. What's the point? I mean, it's a custom cake that requires him to do certain things. He doesn't want to do those certain things for a gay couple or whomever it would be. I just don't see where there is some way in which you can decide to impinge on a person's private property.
Well, there you see what he does is he puts portraits on the cakes.
Yes.
And that's custom made.
And that is fascinating. But
right. I don't know. So the point is that he will sell anything in his store except for something that is custom made, and he has the right, based on religious beliefs, to say, sorry, I can't do this. And that should be a right that should be upheld. Supreme Court has upheld it, but with a condition. They said, well, you didn't get a fair hearing. What if he got a fair hearing? Then what would the Supreme Court's ruling be?
What are they saying?
They dodged it.
They're basically saying then his rights would be somehow diminished if he, based on a different level of a hearing.
Right.
I mean, this is the kind of nonsense that drives lay people, just plain old citizens nuts about this.
Well, and as a lawyer, it drives me crazy. The Supreme Court didn't have the courage to actually rule on the merits.
Okay, rule on the merits equals, in Greg Jarrett's mind, what result? Because obviously you're not completely comfortable with this outcome.
Well, I'm not. I would have preferred that they give a full-throated defense of religious rights.
Right.
To say that there's no exception. It's not a question of a fair hearing or an unfair hearing. But as I said, there is another case that's coming up, a florist.
Oh, boy.
And if they take that case, if they take that case and they actually address the issues as I think they're required to do as 9 Supreme Court justices, then maybe we'll get a good result.
Yeah, look, to me, it looks like the Constitution's pretty clear. You talked about it as elastic and involving, and I look at it as absolute and concrete. And the interpretations that we watch the Supreme Court, district courts through appellate in the Supreme Court, torture reason and common sense in order to get to a conclusion that suits their political impulse of the moment is disgusting.
Well, there's a reason why our founders put freedom of religion and media, press, and free speech number one. Yeah, they put it as number one for a reason, because it really should be the supreme right.
Now, you're not diminishing number 2, 3, 4, et cetera.
Well, I could if you give me time.
I know, that's where let's turn very quickly, if we may, to the president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, opening up this thing about pardons. And the president, as soon as he heard he heard Rudy, I just knew as soon as Rudy said it, we're going to be hearing about pardons for a while. To the president's great credit, and if you want to understand Donald Trump, in my opinion, you have to look at things like this, the way he handles it. There would have been first a little moaning, one would think, in the White House.
Yeah.
But the president is a man given to inspiration and political brilliance for a guy who says he doesn't want to be a politician. He's awfully doggone good at it. He's out the next day talking about, by gosh, I've got the right to pardon myself if I ever do anything wrong. I mean,
right. Well,
perfect answer.
He makes lemonade out of lemons, and that's what he was doing with Rudy's comment. Look, it was rank speculation, and it was unnecessary.
How does anybody ever speculate about what would happen if suddenly the Congress of the United States and the Senate had a moment of lucidity and guts and actually said, it's over. Mueller, pack your bags, get those 13 Democrats out of here. We're shutting her down.
Well, that would
require a country to run, and the joke is over.
That would require intelligence, and there's little of that up on Capitol Hill.
I wasn't going for intelligence. Just a moment of lucidity, non-transferable, brief, just a transition moment for them.
Yeah, the fact is that the Constitution's silent on whether the president can pardon himself. The founders left that to us. There was a 1974 opinion.
Greg is going to go for a very long time.
No, I won't.
He won't.
An assistant attorney general.
Let me explain to you why you won't.
Said you can't do that. And what does she know? 1974, Mary Lawton. What in the world does she know?
Do you see what happens? Sometimes we lose Greg when he gets down these.
I'm sorry, rabbit holes.
No. Down these important evolutions, and you create a tree and a branch for all of them.
Sorry.